Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Salt Lake City, Utah say that a 46-year-old man has been arrested this week after he allegedly stole a large piece of construction equipment and went on a bizarre and destructive rampage in the parking lot of a local grocery store. According to reports, the incident began sometime around noon on August 6th when police received calls from startled witnesses who told them that a man was randomly digging up a parking lot in an excavator. The parking lot in question belonged to a Smith's grocery store and was located in the city's Poplar Grove neighborhood. When officers arrived at the scene, they were able to arrest the suspect, later identified as 46-year-old Omar Ortega. He had allegedly stolen the excavator from a nearby construction site, driving it roughly a mile before starting to dig in the parking lot. While witnesses had prevented Ortega from fleeing the scene, unfortunately, they weren't able to stop his destructive rampage. By the time the 46-year-old was arrested, he had reportedly managed to dig a fairly long and muddy trench, which began in a grassy strip at the border of the parking lot, continued into the sidewalk, and then went into the parking lot itself. In addition to police, the incident required responses from several local utility companies as Ortega hit a water line and ripped up a bunch of newly installed fiber optic cables. At first, there were concerns that he had also caused a gas leak, though it was later determined that this was not the case. The total damage done in the incident is currently estimated to be over $40,000. As for how Ortega managed to steal the excavator in the first place, sources seem to disagree. Many report that the vehicle was left on and unattended, while others state that he managed to somehow jam the wrong key into its ignition and get it working. Ortega is now facing charges including felony theft and felony criminal mischief. Unfortunately, nothing has been reported about the alleged motive behind the strange and destructive incident.
Authorities in Providence, Rhode Island say that a 47-year-old man has been arrested and is facing numerous charges this week after he tried to flee the scene of an accident with a woman clinging to the hood of his vehicle for dear life. The incident began sometime around 7 p.m. on August 9th, when the suspect, later identified as 47-year-old Keith Beard, allegedly got into an accident with a woman in her 20s. The collision reportedly happened somewhere on Exchange Street in the city's downtown. According to the woman, when she got out of her car and tried to approach Beard, it quickly became apparent that he was going to try and flee the scene. It's unclear exactly what happened next, but reports allege that while either trying to prevent Beard from leaving or to stop herself from getting hit by his vehicle, the woman stuck her arm out. When she did this, her hand somehow became trapped in between the hood and windshield of Beard's vehicle. Realizing that Beard had no intention of stopping, the woman threw the rest of her body onto the hood of the car, hanging on for dear life as he drove away from the scene and got onto the highway. For approximately the next 10 minutes, Beard continued to try and escape, at first traveling west on Route 6 and then south on Route 10, before finally getting off at the Huntington Avenue exit. As the incident unfolded, the female victim continued to shout at Beard to stop, while also yelling for help from passing motorists. Some reports state that she eventually managed to call 911 using her free hand to dial her phone and report what was going on. By the time Beard was stopped and arrested while driving on Union Avenue, he had reportedly traveled about 3 miles with the woman on the hood of his car. Amazingly, she only suffered minor injuries as a result of the harrowing ordeal. Beard is now facing numerous charges in connection with the incident, including driving to endanger resulting in personal injury, assault and battery, and driving on a suspended license.
Representatives from Illinois' Lake County Sheriff's Office say that a 55-year-old man has been arrested and is facing charges this week after he allegedly fired a gun at 2 teenagers when they accidentally pulled into his driveway. According to reports, the incident unfolded at around 9:50 p.m. on August 9th when the 2 teenage victims, identified only as a male and female, pulled into a driveway at a residence on the 1800 block of Pheasant Run in the village of Long Grove. The teens were there to visit a friend, but had allegedly pulled into the driveway of the house next door by accident. Before the teens had time to fully figure out their mistake, they were apparently approached by the homeowner, 55-year-old Vladimir Mikhailovich. The 55-year-old immediately demanded to know why they were there and what they were doing in his driveway. When the teens realized that their friend's house was actually next door, they reportedly tried to explain the situation. However, Mihailovich continued to fly off the handle and get more aggressive. Things eventually escalated even further when the teens tried to leave. As they were backing out of the driveway, Mihailovich pulled out a gun and fired 2 shots at them. Thankfully, no one was hit by the gunshots, though the terrified teens fled the area before driving back to their friend's house later on and calling the police. Mihailovich was then arrested and charged with reckless discharge of a firearm. At the time of this recording, the 55-year-old is currently being held in the Lake County Jail.
Authorities in Orange County, California say that they are investigating a suspected poisoning case this week after a local man produced disturbing evidence of his wife allegedly slipping drain cleaner into his drinks on more than one occasion. According to reports, after experiencing a host of serious health issues, including an inflamed esophagus, gastritis, and 2 stomach ulcers, radiologist Jack Chen started to become suspicious of his wife of 10 years, 45-year-old dermatologist Emily Yu. He apparently put 2 and 2 together after remembering a strange chemical taste in some of his drinks, which had first happened a few months earlier back in March of this year. Convinced that he was being poisoned, but knowing that he needed proof, Jack set up secret cameras in his kitchen in July. To his horror, when he reviewed the footage, he allegedly saw his wife pouring drain cleaner into his beverages on more than one occasion. Jack reportedly took the footage to the Irvine Police Department, who began an investigation and arrested Yu on August 4th. At the same time, Jack hired a lawyer, filed for divorce, and sued for custody of he and his wife's 2 young children. He also filed a restraining order against Yu. These documents made even more chilling accusations against Yu, alleging that in addition to poisoning Jack, she had been routinely abusive towards the rest of the family. Jack claims that the 45-year-old dermatologist would yell things at the kids, going on profanity-laden tirades that often included a Chinese phrase that roughly translates to, quote, "go die." Jack also alleges that Yu would force the children to stay awake until she gave them permission to go to sleep, that she hid money from him, and that at one point when he was dealing with symptoms from the alleged poisoning, she forced him to give her massages, standing on his head when he told her that he was too sick. As for Yu, she and her lawyers have categorically denied all of these allegations, saying that, quote, "as a well-respected physician, her goal has always been to help people and never to harm them." Yu has since been released from custody, and despite the video evidence Jack provided, has not been charged with any crimes, as police say that they are continuing their investigation. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing.
Authorities in Spokane County, Washington say that a suspected burglar was on the receiving end of a double dose of instant karma this week when he was not only caught by police at the scene of a crime, but also sprayed by a skunk. According to reports, the incident began just after 3 a.m. on August 4th when officers from the Spokane County Sheriff's Office received a call about a possible burglary in process at a church in the city of Deer Park. The caller explained that a man wearing a mask over his face and carrying a flashlight had been seen on a surveillance live feed at the church walking around inside and looking at audio equipment. When officers arrived at the scene, it didn't take long for them to spot their suspect. The man, later identified as 28-year-old Grant Simonson, was observed walking around in the church before climbing out an open window. When police announced their presence, Simonson was reportedly cooperative and responded to commands to show his hands and get down on the ground. It turned out to be extremely bad timing, as at exactly that moment a skunk reportedly ran out from a corner, sprayed Simonson, and then took off. The 28-year-old was then placed under arrest. After being taken into custody, Simonson reportedly attempted to explain his presence in the church that morning. He said that he had been wide awake and bored, so he decided to go on a bike ride. When he discovered an open window at the church, he said he removed the screen from it to get inside because he was, quote, curious. Police did not buy this excuse, however, and Simonson was booked into Spokane County Jail for second-degree burglary. He was reportedly released later that day, and while reports don't mention why, we're guessing that the awful smell might have played a factor.
Something must be going on with the fries at McDonald's lately, because for the second week in a row we've got a story about how a complaint about cold French fries ended up with someone being hauled off to jail. According to reports, this week's situation began sometime on the afternoon of August 12th, when authorities in Kennesaw, Georgia received 2 911 calls from the same local McDonald's. When they arrived, officers were greeted by the first caller, 24-year-old Antoine Sims, who said that he and his fiancée had a problem with the staff there. According to him, they had ordered food but were not given a receipt because of a problem with one of the restaurant's machines. They had waited around for a bit before noticing that their food was taking a while, at which point they inquired about it and were told that their order was sitting and waiting for them on a nearby counter. Sims told police that when he tried his fries, they were lukewarm instead of hot, at which point he asked if he could get a fresh batch. The employees said no, and Sims continued to complain, at which point the manager got involved. The manager offered the 24-year-old a refund, but he refused, apparently because the money would take several days to get to his bank account. At that point, the argument got even more heated. Sims was asked to leave, and both he and the manager called 911. When police spoke with the manager, however, they told a different story. They claimed that instead of trying to talk things out, Sims had hurled insults at the employees before throwing his food and drink at a staff member. When officers went back outside, they informed Sims that he was banned from the restaurant and that he needed to sign a notice of trespass. That's when Sims reportedly got visibly uncomfortable, refused to sign the order, and asked if he was under arrest. Police replied that yes, in fact he was. It turned out that almost 3 years earlier, Sims had been charged with the murder of a 21-year-old woman named Adalisa Muratovich. According to reports, in October of 2018, Muratovich was allegedly accompanying 2 people who were trying to buy drugs from Sims in Fulton County when the deal went bad and a gunfight broke out. Muratovich was struck and killed, after which Sims allegedly drove her body to a subdivision in the city of Lawrenceville and set a car on fire with her remains inside. Sims was charged with felony murder in March of 2019, though was released on a $275,000 bond earlier this year. He was due to appear back in court in July, but never showed up. When Sims was informed at the McDonald's this week that he was under arrest, he reportedly panicked and took off on foot. He was taken into custody a short time later after allegedly being found trying to break into a third-floor apartment at a nearby residential building. Sims has now been charged for his outstanding warrant, for obstruction or hindering law enforcement, criminal trespass, and for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, because 31 grams of marijuana was found in his fiance's vehicle at the McDonald's.
Authorities in Washington County, Oregon say that a 31-year-old ex-boyfriend of a missing woman has been officially charged with her murder this week after her remains were recovered from a landfill. According to reports, 27-year-old Kaylee Birdsell was first reported missing by family members on August 5th after no one had been able to get a hold of her for several days. Just 2 days later, authorities received an anonymous call about the case. Disturbingly, the caller claimed that Kaylee had been murdered and that her body had been put into the garbage at a local apartment complex. The same day that police received the anonymous call, a Washington County deputy reportedly found Kaylee's vehicle, a Jeep Liberty, and pulled it over. At the time, an unidentified woman was behind the wheel, accompanied by Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, 31-year-old Fabian Albert Hernandez. The pair were also in possession of Kaylee's cell phone and other personal items belonging to her. While speaking with the woman and Hernandez, police noticed what appeared to be a bullet hole in the side of the Jeep, as well as a small amount of blood in a rear compartment of the vehicle. At that point, the woman allegedly told them that she needed to get away from Hernandez and that she would tell them everything. She was taken into custody, and Hernandez was arrested on charges of identity theft and fraudulent use of a credit card. When the woman was questioned by police, she reportedly told them that a few days before Kaylee had been reported missing, the 3 of them had been traveling in a Jeep in a rural area of Washington County. Kaylee had been asleep in the back seat when out of nowhere Hernandez pulled out a gun and fired several shots at her, killing her. She said that they had put the 27-year-old's body in a trunk and then had dumped it at the apartment complex where the anonymous caller had mentioned. She further claimed that she had only helped Hernandez because she feared for her life. By the time police received this information, the garbage at the apartment complex had already been collected. They followed the route of the waste to a landfill in the city of Corvallis, where they continued their investigation. Tragically, on August 9th, Kaylee's remains were discovered during a search there. The following day, Hernandez was slapped with additional charges including second-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. However, authorities say that more charges are likely. At the time of this recording, the unidentified woman who allegedly participated in the crime is not facing charges. The situation is still developing.
Authorities in Miami-Dade County, Florida say that a 26-year-old Instagram and OnlyFans model has been arrested and charged this week, 4 months after she allegedly killed her 27-year-old boyfriend. According to reports, the incident began just before 5 p.m. on April 3, 2022, when Miami police received a call to a luxury high-rise apartment building in the city's Edgewater neighborhood. When police arrived at the residence, they found 27-year-old Christian Obumseli suffering from a serious knife wound to the chest. He was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital's Ryder Trauma Center, though sadly would die just a short time later. Christian's girlfriend, then 25-year-old Courtney Clenny, the only other person at home at the time of the incident, was placed under arrest, but was eventually released while police continued their investigation. When questioned, Clenny claimed that she had attacked Christian in self-defense. She said that he had knocked her to the ground and that she had thrown the knife that had caused the fatal wound because she feared for her life. According to friends and family, though Clenny, who went by the name Courtney Taylor online, made her life look glamorous to her roughly 2 million Instagram and OnlyFans followers, in reality, it was well known that she and Christian had a volatile relationship. Despite reportedly dating for less than 2 years, the couple had broken up and gotten back together countless times. They had lived at their luxury apartment for just a few months at the time of the incident. But even so, building management were already in the process of trying to force them out because of the sheer amount of domestic disturbance complaints that they had received. While Clenny continues to maintain that she acted in self-defense on the day of Christian's death, authorities now allege that this was not the case. While it's not clear exactly what evidence detectives have managed to uncover in their 4-month investigation, some details have been reported to the public. In particular, authorities say that Clenny's story about throwing the knife at Christian does not align with the evidence at the scene, and that he was instead stabbed at close range. Police also allege that on the day of the incident, Clenny made 2 calls to a family member before calling 911 to get help for her dying boyfriend. In addition to this, authorities have released a disturbing piece of footage that appears to show Clenny attacking Christian in the elevator of their apartment just weeks before his death. Clenny was arrested in Hawaii this week, where she had reportedly gone to attend rehabilitation for substance abuse and post-traumatic stress disorder. She is now facing a charge of second-degree murder with a deadly weapon, and is expected to be extradited back to Miami-Dade County in the coming days. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long-term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.